So, a new talking point we see by people in the establishment left wing is claiming that anybody who criticizes someone that's left wing is inciting violence against them. This is again going to show the hypocrisy of these type of people, and I've talked about things like this in the past. So, specifically, what's being referenced is Ilhan Omar. And Ilhan Omar said at a foundation speaking for CARE, which is an Islamic group in the United States here, that the founding of CARE was as a result of after 9/11, when some people did some things, and then we had to found CARE because there was considered to be retribution against Muslims. Now, I do think that this is downplaying the events of 9/11. I'm not going to jump on it as much as some other people had, but I think when taking in context with other things she said, such as the West is terrible and it's been founded on genocide and slavery and things like that, it seems that she's showing a pattern of not really taking seriously these type of things. Now, having said that, I didn't think her comments on Notre Dame Cathedral burning were problematic at all. So I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. But nonetheless, I could see how people would be offended if you lost loved ones, or if you were in New York, or if you remember the details of that day. It was horrific, and just downplaying it as some people did something seems really disastrous. It would be the equivalent. How would Omar feel if we said, if there was a terrible shooting at a mosque, such as in New Zealand, if we said, some guy did something? She would be like, this is outrageous, it's really terrible, etc. So it just seems ridiculous that she takes this tact, and I do think that it's worth pointing out that the people have pointed it out. So Trump puts a video together, or copied it or whatever, and published it, where it was her saying that juxtaposed by images of the towers falling down, and people were saying this is somehow inciting violence. Now, you could ask a question of whether or not you think the president should be doing this type of things. I don't have a problem with it, but I can see how some people would be like it's childish, or that it's something beyond the scope of what a president should be doing. Fine, that's whatever. But to say that this somehow equals incitement towards violence against Omar is actually absurd. And this is becoming the new tactic where you can't criticize anything that anyone on the left says, or a lot of these people, and again, not everyone on the left, but you have a lot of people on the left, particularly mainstream media type people or people of political power in the left, that will come out and tell you, you can't make this criticism or it's inciting violence. And this occurs over and over with their double standards on speech and semantics. Now, if you remember, I did a video and I did a whole post on a lot of websites where I talked specifically about the 2016 convention, how we had all of the media people were saying that the Republican convention was that of fear and hatred and anger, but the Democratic convention was of love and mercy and greatness. But both conventions were talking about things they thought were problems. The Democrat convention, for what it's worth, that they said was all about love, was talking about how evil Trump would be, and he would be a fascist, and how racist his ideas were, and how racist the country is, and cops that are just out there brutally killing people, and all sorts of things. Now, these could be problems that are reasonable to talk about, but there's no reason that that's somehow a message of love, where when Trump's talking about the problems with illegal immigration, or the problems with trade policy, or the problem with Barack Obama's economy, that was somehow a message of hatred. But we see these double standards apply over and over again. So, for example, Bernie's one of the people that came out and said that Trump was having incitement against Omar by tweeting this. Now, here, let's look at this specifically, because no damage has been done to Omar. Maybe she has got threats. Well, one, we know that Trump's got a multitude of threats. Not only that, we've had people that have physically tried to get into the White House, presumably to do him so harm. We've had direct threats being offered by mainstream people such as celebrity and other politicians about Trump, saying that bad things should happen to him or his family, and that violence should be engaged against them. We've had all sort of that stuff. And each and every time I've defended and said, it is not incitement. I'm not blaming the media. I'm not blaming the politicians, except those directly calling for violence if violence occurs. That's been my standard the whole time. We should be allowed to criticize each other, even in harsh ways, and that doesn't mean we're inciting violence. But why is it that the left says they could say anything they want? They could call Trump a traitor. They could say he's a Russian spy. They could say he's a dictator. They could say that gay people will be jailed or thrown out, and there'll be racism and immigrants will be thrown out, and black people will suffer. They could say all this about Trump, and that's not considered incitement. They think that's perfectly fine. And we know that violence is happening that there is violence happening to Trump supporters and attempted violence towards Trump himself. For example, we just saw another story of an immigrant wearing a MAGA hat that just got beat by two people. So it's not as if this stuff doesn't happen, but I'm still saying that doesn't prove that the media incited the violence of the two people that beat up that MAGA hat wearer. Unless they're condoning that violence, or unless they're specifically calling for it, I don't judge them for that. So let's look at Bernie specifically. Bernie had rhetoric about how the Republicans and their plans to not have Medicare for all and to repeal Obamacare would lead to thousands of people dying from not having health care. And so someone took that rhetoric seriously and went out into a ball field and shot Steve Scalise and shot at a bunch of other Republican lawmakers because he thought he was retaliating for them trying to kill people by ending their health care. Now, I didn't blame Bernie for that. But the hypocrisy was this. Bernie didn't blame himself for that. He didn't say, oh my goodness, I incited violence. And this happens over and over. We see this again. There was a whole thread I did on this where the idea was you had when Gabby Gifford was shot, everyone wanted to jump on the bandwagon blaming Sarah Palin. Bernie Sanders actually sent out a fundraising report after Gabby Gifford got shot saying something to the effect of, when will Republicans tone down the rhetoric? Can you even not be Republican in this state anymore and walk the streets safely? And then when it comes to his supporters shooting someone, did he say, oh my goodness, it's just my rhetoric that I need to... No, he said, we need to tone down rhetoric on all sides. And now it's back to, oh, it's just Trump that's inciting violence again. So it's okay for Bernie to say what he wants to say about Trump being a terrible person or ruining the country or leading to lives being lost or potentially being a Russian asset or being a racist, etc. All that's okay. That's not incitement, even though his supporters have actually went out and shot someone. But Trump to criticize Omar for her comments on 9/11, that's considered incitement. This is the double standard we see all over the left. All I ask is for consistency. If you're going to say that we can no longer criticize people on the other side because that's considered incitement, then fine, live by that standard and you yourself don't criticize people. I choose to take the opposite tack that says it's perfectly fine for Bernie to criticize Trump and his policies and say he's a crappy person, as it is for the mainstream media. It's fine for them to engage in conspiracy theories about Russia collusion. It's fine for them to spread rumors that, to get out there and, they're not, it's bad journalistically with journalistic integrity, but it's not an incitement of violence for them to purposely spread rumors about or stories about Trump being racist and this, that, and the other and exaggerate things. It's not good, but it's not incitement to violence. I'm not going to blame them for that. Yet that's exactly the tack they take. And then they even go a step further because you see several people, many prominent people on the left, including people in the mainstream media, that have this, is it okay to punch a Nazi? And so they're defending that, yes, sometimes it's okay to use violence. And you might say, well, that's only against Nazis. But then the same people go on to define people as Nazis, such as Ben Shapiro and other people such as that. Now, let's take this idea of incitement that supposedly they claim is that somehow Trump's taking Elon out of context. I don't think so, really. I think it's a fair criticism to make. But then we just had a big story last week of Ted Lieu, who's a Democratic congressman, who has, in front of a committee, has Candace Owen, a black woman, on there, and takes words of hers out of context, implying that somehow she thinks Hitler wasn't that bad of a guy. Now, a week later, she gets surrounded by a bunch of masked white people who are chasing her out of buildings and issuing threats to her, saying in part that she supports Hitler. So why isn't Bernie and all these Democrats in the mainstream media that are so concerned about Trump hypothetically causing down the road some people to get angry at Omar, because they think he took something out of context? If that's the case and that's the standard, then shouldn't they all be out there today going, my God, what Ted Lieu did, taking Candace Owens out of context, implying that she liked Hitler, and then a bunch of people, white people in masks surround her and talk about how she likes Hitler and issue threats and chase her out of a place. But no, they have a double standard because they don't care. And this is all about, it's constantly these double standards where they want to have whatever speech they want. They want to be allowed to advocate actual violence. They want to be able, which I'm against, they want to be allowed to criticize, which I'm for, even to the point where they're making things up, which obviously I'm not against, but I don't think that's inciting violence. But if anyone dares to criticize anyone on their progressive stack or anyone of power in the mainstream liberal party and the Democrats, then all of a sudden that's incitement towards violence and we have to avoid it. So it's ridiculous, and the more this happens, the more censorship's going to be approved of, the more that we're going to try to silence voices. Remember, the establishment Democratic Party already controls 90% of all of our cultural institutions of power, and they want more. They want that 10% gone. They want voices censored off online places. They don't want people to be able to make up their own mind and to have their own content. They want to be the gatekeepers of information and control the narrative. So, hey, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll be putting some more content out later, and have a good one.